Thank you for joining us. I'm Richard Peritz, and we are on location in Washington, D.C., in the offices of Judicial Watch. In our world today, the need to be in touch with reality and have transparency and not be misled by information from one side or the other, the Freedom of Information Act provides the public with true facts, whether we like them all or not. In the forefront of such research and exposing truth is Judicial Watch. We have the privilege today of meeting again with Tom Fitton right after these messages.
Life Extension Foundation was established in 1977 and is now the world's largest consumer-based anti-aging organization. Life-saving achievements taken for granted today were pioneered by Life Extension Foundation decades ago. Life Extension is currently funding $10 million a year in research on significantly extending a healthy human lifespan. Diseases that once plagued humanity have largely been eradicated by scientific innovation. 3 leading causes of death in 1900 are no longer leading killers today. Smallpox killed millions before it was eliminated in 1979. Life Extension funds research to fight biological aging so that it also will become a relic of the past. To learn more, log on to lifeextensionfoundation.org.
Anywhere else, this would be a vacation on the Mediterranean. But here, it's also a journey into history. From modern Tel Aviv to the ancient cities of Herod, the Romans, the Crusaders. The history of Israel lives in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
When I was young, it seemed that life was so wonderful. A miracle. Oh, it was beautiful, magical. And then they showed me a world where I could be so dependable. Oh, intellectual, cynical.
Find magic again. Sprout by HP. With Intel RealSense technology inside, now you can bend the rules of creativity outside.
With us again is Tom Fitton. Tom, it's such a pleasure to have you back on the show.
Good to be with you again.
So much has changed since I had the pleasure of interviewing you for the first time back at the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach. What are your thoughts on where we are in this new year?
There's remarkable opportunities for the issues that Judicial Watch cares about with the new Trump administration. And we just hope that President Trump follows on his campaign promises to really drain the swamp. For those of you who don't know about Judicial Watch, we're an anti-corruption watchdog organization. We use the Freedom of Information Act, the FOIA, to get records from the government. We uncovered the Obama IRS scandal details. We blew open the Benghazi scandal, and of course we were central to uncovering key facts about the Clinton email scandal. And so we're hoping that President Trump follows through on his promises to drain the swamp, turns a new page into an era of transparency on accountability for both the Obama administration and frankly for his own administration. So we're hopeful he takes important steps there, and we're still in many ways waiting, Richard, for the Trump administration to come to power, because there's a lot of opponents of President Trump up here in the swamp in Washington, D.C., and they're still essentially running amok in the various government agencies he's supposed to be overseeing.
Draining the swamp is something that has occurred in American history before. Please elaborate on that a little.
Well, you know, I recall Nancy Pelosi in 2006 when she led Democrats to kicking out Republicans in the House. Her campaign slogan then was "Drain the swamp." So it's something that appeals to both the left and the right. And if President Trump follows through on those promises effectively, I think he can, get broad support for any anti-corruption work or activities he's going to pursue. In the meantime, though, we've got this problem where you've got the Obama administration still running things in many respects here, even though President Trump is the president. You've got the agencies, for instance, coming into various court cases with Judicial Watch and still defending Hillary Clinton's email practices. Who would have thunk that 3 months into the Trump administration, we'd still be battling over whether or not Hillary Clinton did anything wrong on the emails and still be fighting obstruction and delay from the Justice Department and the State Department. Your viewers should know that the president only has a few appointees in each agency, let's say the State Department or Justice or the various agencies. And otherwise, the bureaucracies are full of people who are generally hostile to his values and don't think he should be president. So we've got this kind of crisis of government up here as a result of this resistance to the people's choice as president of the United States.
How interesting. Not the first time in American history such situations have occurred. I'd like to ask you about reforms. What about tax reform? What do you feel needs to be done?
Well, the biggest tax reform would be to really curtail the IRS's powers, if not eliminate the IRS. The IRS was used to abuse President Obama's political enemies, and that would be the most significant tax reform from my point of view in terms of corruption. As to what rate should be and how much taxes we should pay, I defer to my colleagues in the conservative economic movement for what the reform should be specifically. I'm more interested in the reform of the way the IRS operates. We have an IRS commissioner, John Koskinen, who was appointed by President Obama. It's pretty clear he lied to Congress about what he knew and when about deleted emails at the IRS and the Obama IRS scandal. He should have been impeached, but Republicans didn't want to do that. And I question why the president has yet to fire him. So the IRS needs to be put back under the control of the people as opposed to the politicians that were abusing it.
One of our supporters of the Shalom Show on television, which by the way is now on ABC in Palm Beach and other stations nationwide, Bill Falloon has suggested that maybe the IRS should not be volumes of paper, but actually just a 20-page thing that even college students and high school students could figure out.
Well, some of these flat tax advocates point out that if you had a flat tax or a much more simple IRS code, you could file your taxes for most Americans on a postcard or something the equivalent thereof. But you know, I think if you want to get people behind IRS reform, you should highlight the political abuses the IRS has engaged in over the years. And I frankly don't understand why we have example after example of presidents abusing the IRS and it being allowed to continue in its current form. It's a sword of Damocles over our First Amendment rights, and people are afraid of the IRS. They're afraid they're going to get audited if they contribute to the wrong candidate or organization. And that shouldn't be the case in this great country.
Speaking of ostracizing the wrong candidates, it is said that organizations such as J Street get a blank check and Z Street with Lowenthal Marcus were basically persecuted by the IRS because their nonprofit organization views weren't consistent with those of that administration.
Yeah, that's a real interesting story. I haven't looked at the details of that in some time, but I do recall that there was this concern that the IRS was actually penalizing those who didn't agree with the Obama administration's foreign policy towards Israel. And it's remarkable that we've had such abuses of the IRS that it's not just about opposing Obama, but if you don't like his policies abroad, you're being targeted by the IRS. And it's very concerning, and it still needs to be exposed fully. And this is, again, an opportunity for President Trump. I've always believed that, assuming that, that the administration, whoever was elected, was truly interested in the rule of law, there'd be a sort of truth commission. And we'd get information about the various scandals of the 8 years of the Obama administration, including the IRS abuses, where they were targeting Friends of Israel in retaliation for being Friends of Israel. And that's about as serious a violation of our First Amendment rights as you can envision. We shouldn't be afraid of our tax agency coming after us for our views on policy.
Is Judicial Watch researching this particular subject right now?
Well, we have general lawsuits about the IRS abuses, and this would be covered. You know, one of the things that we've uncovered just recently, for instance, is that they were targeting donors of the groups that they were harassing and suppressing, the IRS was. And in one of those cases, the IRS just told us in recent weeks, Richard, that they found 7,000 new documents they needed to look at that they didn't tell us about a year and a half ago. So we're right in the middle of this IRS scandal, and who knows what else is going to come out.
Is Judicial Watch also researching and investigating FDA abuse?
We've done FDA abuse in the past. One of the things we've had concerns about is the FDA being politicized. We've had concerns about the HPV vaccine. We don't buy into the general anti-vaccination movement, but the HPV is not a necessary vaccine in the traditional sense of the word, and it can have severe consequences for those who receive it, and we've exposed some of the dangers associated with HPV, but because it's in that category of vaccines related to sexual health, the left thinks all bets are off in terms of safety and efficacy. So as a result, we've been looking at the issues like that.
There's a big issue of corruption, allegedly with regard to the availability of new solutions, new cures, new research into the diseases of aging in general. And the FDA is resistant to explore these treatments and thereby reduce massive costs in healthcare in this country by simply embracing alternatives.
I don't know specifically about the anti-aging treatments that are under review at the FDA. What I do know, generally the FDA is seen as a black hole in terms of new and emerging treatments on all sorts of diseases. And it's not necessarily the public health that's causing it, it's just the bureaucracy. And I'm hoping the Trump administration, his recent appointment there, will get the FDA on the side of innovation as opposed to being on the side of those who just basically want to use the government to stop new and emerging drug therapies.
This is all very interesting, but we have to take a commercial break. We'll be back right after these messages. We're back with Tom Fitton. Tom, an issue of concern to very many people is the question of executive orders. Please update us on your views on that.
Well, these are executive orders the President has recently issued with respect to immigration from countries torn apart by Islamic extremist terrorists, Islamic jihadism. And the President wants to be sure that people coming in from those countries are properly vetted, so he's trying to put a pause in place so that we're more secure. And there are these, there's a judiciary that's completely hostile to this. I think it's more anti-Trump than applying the law. And so it's a crucial fight. We finally have a president who's willing to say that he's against Islamic jihadism per se, as opposed to the amorphous violent extremism that really doesn't mean much and distracts people from the true threats we're facing from terrorism abroad and where it's actually coming from. So we've got a president who wants to protect the country at the borders, but he's not being allowed to do that by an activist judiciary. So it's a serious issue. I mean, should we just let everyone in? I mean, that seems to be the other side of the coin there. And President Trump at least is trying to take some key steps, and there's always more to be done, to at least stop the worst of the worst from coming in here, at least and at least put in procedures in place so that we have better ways of ascertaining whether someone from Syria or Yemen or places like that are trying to do us harm by taking advantage of either a refugee system or otherwise lax immigration system.
So I gather you don't regard the treacherous Fort Hood murders as workplace violence.
Well, that's a prime example of our government trying to distract us from the truth. It wasn't workplace violence, it was an Islamic terrorist attack. And to highlight the fact that there are terrorism and there are terrorists associated with Islamic fundamentalism isn't to say that we should go to war against all Muslims, but we should recognize that there is this outlook within the Muslim community that would justify political violence and terrorism, and we have to make sure that people who are committed to that type of activity either are kept out of the country or we're tracking them more carefully and taking appropriate law enforcement measures here at home.
Looking again at another matter of great concern and looking at history, Russia, the British Empire and America combined defeated Nazi Germany and its allies. And here we are today, maybe facing a greater threat to Western civilization. And Russia is fighting the same enemy. Why do you believe there's all of this anti-Russian nonsense going on?
Well, as a conservative, I don't trust the Russians as far as I could throw them. But you can bet that the debate about Russia and our relationship with Russia has nothing to do with our national security these days, certainly from the left. It's all about how it hurts or helps President Trump. If you're looking at what the Trump administration's policies are, they are not helpful to the Russians at all. He wants to modernize our nuclear weapons, which is going to be a massive issue for the Russians as they try to keep up. He's no friend of the Russians in terms of policy. So it's really just a matter of conspiracy theory and fanciful thinking to think that he's somehow colluding with the Russians. We should have a policy that treats the Russians with clear eyes, but I think it's going to be difficult to do that in this political atmosphere. And I think we need to be a bit more aggressive in standing for our values both in the Middle East and in Europe, and that might mean more confrontations with the Russians, but we shouldn't also have needless confrontations just to prove a point, and which the Democratic left seems to want to do, which is ironic given their coddling of the Russians in the past. We just can't let we can't let political convenience and whether or not it helps you politically dictate whether or not what our foreign policy is going to be vis-a-vis Russia. I think, for one, we need to be much more aggressive, but the debate isn't about whether we should have a strong foreign policy. The debate is whether or not it helps or hurts Donald Trump, and that's just a crazy way to operate.
Who benefits from any discord with Russia?
Who benefits from any discord with Russia? Right now, everything that goes wrong in the world is going to be blamed on Donald Trump. So his political opposition benefits from discord with Russia. Now, there's a difference between having discord for discord's sake and discord because Russia's not doing something in the interest of the United States, and we need to protect ourselves. And sometimes you're going to come at loggerheads with a country like Russia, who has a very different value system and outlook internationally than the United States does. But discord for discord's sake is something I think, unfortunately, the left wants.
How very interesting that is. I'd like to change topics yet again, sir, and ask you, what stands out as some of the more exciting or important accomplishments of Judicial Watch?
Well, the most significant issue over the last year or so, or 2 years, has been the uncovering of the Clinton email scandal. It was our Freedom of Information Act lawsuits asking for records from the State Department about scandals like Benghazi that forced the State Department to finally own up to the fact that they had these Clinton emails that they weren't turning over to the American people. And it was our subsequent pressure in court that caused more and more of these emails to come out, which caused more and more legal issues and potential criminal issues for Hillary Clinton, criminal issues which remain to this day. And none of this would have happened, I'm convinced, but for the work of this one organization, Judicial Watch. Getting back to the Russia question, I think it's important that the real scandal there isn't the Russian collusion with the Trump organization or Trump campaign on the election, which I think is the unicorn theory of the election. The Democrats lost, so they're concocting some sort of criminal activity by their opposition. What the real crime is the illegal leaking of classified material, of surveillance of Trump and his team, and there has to be significant legal consequences to that and investigations of that. And we frankly don't trust the Congress, we don't trust the bureaucrats in the Justice Department or the FBI to come clean on this issue, and that's why we've initiated well over a dozen Freedom of Information Act requests, and we have at least 2 lawsuits pending. We'll probably have more by the time this airs, trying to get an independent evaluation of what went wrong in terms of the violations of law, in terms of these leaks about Russian surveillance.
Before we end our conversation for today, I'd like you to share with our audience a message as to, first of all, how they can reach Judicial Watch if they want more information, and what your plans are for the future.
Well, the wonderful thing about Judicial Watch is that you can support us with charitable contributions, but in the least you should find out more about our work. You can go to our website at judicialwatch.org. We're on Facebook, Judicial Watch. You should be able to find us, and on Twitter and such. Find out about the work we're doing. Look at the documents I'm talking about. We get documents from the government you won't get from the media. and you come to our website, we'll show you what those documents are about government corruption that the government really doesn't want you to see, that we are suing to get. And so we're going to be hardcore on exposing government corruption on an ongoing basis, whether it be on the Russian scandal, the IRS, Benghazi, Clinton emails, and to the degree that President Trump gets into a little bit of trouble, we'll be asking him questions as well and demanding answers. So we're nonpartisan, we're conservative, but in the end, it's not a matter of whether you're liberal or conservative. It's a question of whether or not we're going to tolerate unbridled corruption here in Washington, D.C. President Trump is right. The swamp does need to be drained.
Freedom of Information Act. So Judicial Watch's information and sources are all factual, no fake news.
No fake news. You can't argue with the government documents, and that's what I love about our work, is that when we get materials from the government and we show it to the American people and say, hey, what do you think about this? This is what it says. And so there's no debate too much about what's in the actual documents. We're going to argue with the government that gave it to us. Now you can argue about the interpretation of those documents, but in the least, the American people have the primary source material that allows them to judge for themselves.
Most interesting and very useful, and in this age of misinformation and disinformation, it is essential for organizations such as yours to provide it to the public and to whoever needs it.
Well, we're happy to do it. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I'll be right back.
Human age reversal. We may be there already. Human studies are now ready to begin to confirm meaningful reversal of pathological aging processes. These clinical trials aim to alter older humans so that they function as much younger individuals. Even modest success will result in a paradigm shift that will impart enormous societal benefits, such as sparing Medicare from insolvency. Life extension is not standing idle while 5,000 Americans die each day from age-related illnesses. Joining us are physician scientists who want to hurry up these technologies to keep people from aging to death. While life extension is pushing these projects forward, we need financial help to ensure these studies are carried through to fruition. You can support this research by making a tax-deductible donation to Life Extension Society. All donations will be used to fund age reversal research. Join us on this essential mission.